Our presentation is about preservation and rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation is defined as the action of restoring something that has been damaged to its former condition. Rehabilitation allows continued use of a site, whether it is for its historic purpose or a new purpose.
And it's for buildings or sites that need repairs, additions, or alterations, and this is the most useful and easy strategy. While fixing or adding on to the site, this process keeps all of the values that make it a building to preserve, and this is also called adaptive reuse.
In the background, you can see an example of a building being rehabilitated.
Rehabilitation is also referred to as adaptive use. By dictionary definition, rehabilitation is the action of restoring something that has been damaged to its former condition. Rehabilitation is the best strategy for simple repairs, alterations, or additions to historic properties. Most rehabilitation efforts include things like new mechanical systems or handicapped accessible features. Rehabilitation standards are used so additions and alterations are compatible with and protect historic integrity and context. Union Station, built in the 1890s in St. Louis, Missouri, is one of the best examples of rehabilitation. In the 1980s, it received a $150 million rehabilitation effort and added restaurants and a shopping center inside. After 30 years, it was adapted again into a train-themed hotel and event space. Through decades of additions, it still remains a National Historic Landmark.
Restoration is defined as the process of depicting the form, features, and character of a property as it once was in a specific period of time. This is usually done when the historic integrity of a structure is lost, and the choice to begin this process should be considered carefully. This usually involves the removal of certain features or reconstructions of missing elements. Upgrades to the building, such as plumbing and electrical systems, would be limited but could also be required to keep the structure up to code. The Frank Lloyd Wright home is a perfect example of restoration, as it had been modified over the years and at once had been turned into apartments, but the decision was made to return everything to the same state it was in before 1909.
Character defining elements. Identify, retain, and preserve. Protect and maintain. Repair, replace. Design for missing historical features. Alterations/additions to historical buildings. Energy and efficiency/accessibility and considerations/health and safety consideration as well.
Now we will be discussing why it is important to retain them. The importance of preservation focuses on the maintenance and the repair of existing historic materials and the retention of a property's form as it has evolved over time. So what this is saying is that it will keep the structure alive through repair and through maintenance. The importance of rehabilitation is that it acknowledges the need to alter or to add to the historic property to meet continuing or changing using while retaining the property's historic character. So what this is doing is that it keeps the historic character alive, but it also can continue to grow, and it adapts the building, and this can also be known as an adaptive reuse. But the important thing about rehabilitation is that it still follows the same style.
As Carl Elefante once said, the greenest building is the one already built. This quote primarily refers to the differences between building rehabilitation and new construction. Rehabilitation, also known as adaptive reuse, is when a property is restored to either its former historical condition or when a property is given a new use. This process typically requires minimal changes to the materials, features, and spaces of a building or property. New construction, on the other hand, is when a structure is constructed from scratch on a new or pre-existing site. This process requires land that is not already in use, as well as new materials. Now, in reference to Elefante's quote, rehabilitation is considered greener because it takes a building or property that has already been constructed and reuses it to create something better. Because minimal changes need to be made in the rehabilitation process, less materials and space are required. On the contrary, new construction is less green because it takes away land that was not previously in use and creates entirely new structures that must be built from brand new materials. The process of new construction is more costly and ultimately less efficient than simply making changes to a previously built structure. And here are our citations.